Hey guys, welcome back to the Shipmate YouTube channel. This week we're going to be talking about vetting service providers, especially software service providers. So guys, if you're running a business, you're probably going to run into different types of service providers. Usually these will be like software service providers, whether they provide dashboards, ad management, SEO, all different types of things. But you're going to be, interacting with these different service providers, and you're going to have to, be able to make a decision that's good for your business as to which one to choose. So what I want to do today is go through my process that I use anytime I'm evaluating a service provider, here at this business and at other businesses I've worked at. So the first thing I like to do whenever I'm going to evaluate a service provider is do some background research, right? So the first thing I like to do is make sure I am well versed on the topic. Like, I don't have to be an expert, but I want to know some things about what I'm looking for, because otherwise it's hard to identify what is good information, what is a good service provider, and what is somebody who's just feeding me hot air, right? Who is somebody just selling themselves to me rather than giving me something of value. So I think it's really important to have this base level of background knowledge. So if you're going to be looking for somebody to do your ads, right, or you're looking for a totally automated ad software solution, do some research about how ads work. Do some research about how, AI works. Figure out what you're investing in, what those technologies do, so you can have an intelligent conversation with the person you are meeting with. Same thing whether you're doing fulfillment, whether you're doing some sort of dashboard, whether you're doing an insurance claims agency. Doesn't really matter who you're going to be meeting with or evaluating, but you want to know what they do, how they do it, and have that base level of background knowledge about their industry and their expertise. The next thing I want to suggest is to look at reviews, right? Because right now we're looking high level. There might be 1,000 solutions out there for what you're looking for. A couple hundred different software companies that do what you're looking for. And the best way to narrow these down, I find, is with online reviews. So today on the internet, there's tons of people talking, there's tons of forums, there's tons of Google reviews, Facebook reviews, LinkedIn reviews, all these different kinds of review platforms. And because of this, you're able to get some insight into these companies before you ever talk to them, right? Because you don't have time to call 100 companies, right? You don't have time to call, 100 marketing agencies or 100 PR firms or 100 digital ad firms, right? So what you want to do is look at the reviews and use that to help narrow down your list, because you're going to find that some firms, right, people talk positively about. Other firms or other companies or software solutions, people talk negatively about. And this will allow you to save yourself a lot of time when you're putting together that initial, consideration set. So the next step for me is the consideration set, right? So what I want to do is I want to pick somewhere between 3 to 5 companies that I want to talk to in my initial go-through. Sometimes I will hire the final company out of this initial list of 3 to 6. Sometimes I use this set of 3 or 6 to get even more knowledge, even more insight. But this is usually where I try to have at least 3 big name companies, reputable companies that I'm like, they're industry leaders in there. And then I like to have a few small ones sprinkled in as well, or lesser known ones. And I like to have this mix mosh because I like to talk to different companies that are offering different things, because they might have different strengths, they might have different weaknesses. The people that work there, I might get along with more at one company versus the other company. And, there's a lot of variables here. So I want to see the wide spectrum. And that's why I think it's important that you talk to multiple companies. Don't ever make a decision after speaking to one, because you don't get to compare their pitch to anybody else, or their offerings, or their strengths and their weaknesses to somebody else's, or even the price, right? Like, how do you know you're paying the right price unless you don't get, 3, 4, 5 prices, right? So it's important to do this as background research. And then what I usually do after that is, once I've had these initial interviews, I do a second round of interviews, right? I'll either interview, my top one or two out of that list that I initially considered, or I might even introduce a couple other options if I was not satisfied. But what's really important here, especially during the second set of interviews, is to consider some of the points that people don't really think about, right? Like, we're all thinking about, does this meet my need? Does this solve my problem? Is it affordable? But there's two questions I really want you to ask that have gotten me in the past, and I think they're invaluable. And the first is, does this work with my current suite of solutions, right? So there might be this awesome, flashy piece of software or this awesome service provider, but they don't play well with what you're currently doing well, right? So maybe they don't plug in with the marketplace you're using, or maybe they don't work with your dashboard, or maybe they don't work with something from a technical end. The integrations don't work out. This can be a deal breaker. Even if that company is great, sometimes this can really, throw a wrench into things, and you might think you can overcome it. But it's important to be realistic about this, right? If you think you guys can work together to integrate everything smoothly, make everything move, that's fantastic, right? Sometimes you can build a new integration. You can overcome an obstacle. But other times, some software just doesn't play well with other softwares. And sometimes that's just what kills a deal. Second, you need to make sure that you are capable of using the software. Right, so right now I'm talking to a camera, right? And you can buy a camera that has one button, or you can buy a camera that has 50 buttons, right? And the camera with 50 buttons is probably better than the camera with one button, but you might not know what all 50 of those buttons do. You might not be able to even figure out how to take a picture with that camera that has 50 buttons. And the same thing's true of software. Sometimes the best software takes more management. It takes more know-how. It takes more experience. I've dealt with some software programs in the past where it took a full-time person just managing that software, making sure the data was up to date, making sure everything was, running smoothly. Some softwares are not very good from a user experience standpoint, even though they're great at what they do. I mean, and this is something people really underestimate, is they see this software, they see it does everything they want it to, but they're not realistic about their ability to actually utilize and use that software. And this can be a huge drawback, especially on, larger pieces of software that you are plugging into your system to run with. So I think it's important to, think about the usability the same as you do the capability, because sometimes you might be biting off more than you can chew, and I've done that once or twice. So it's important to keep that in mind. So once you have, did the second round of interviews, you can go for a third one, a fourth one, a fifth one. Sometimes you might end up interviewing 20 companies so you find the one you want. But usually this will, allow you to arrive at, somebody that has the solution that you need. What I always recommend when you're going to deal with a solution provider, whether it's software, whether it's a service, whether it's whatever, is to negotiate, right? Because at the end of the day, if you try to negotiate, the only thing they can say is no, right? So it makes sense to try to negotiate and figure out if you can create more value for yourself within that deal, or get something else you want, or lower the price, or whatever. And this might allow you to go with a provider who might be slightly more expensive, who might have slightly less features, because you might be able to negotiate those features or that lower price in. So when you go into this negotiation, sometimes that will allow you to go with a service provider who might be better, that was giving you less because of a price point, or, they were a little more expensive than their competition. And this will give you added flexibility. So I recommend, if you like a company, to try to negotiate with them, because like I said, the worst they can say is no. So guys, I hope you learned a bunch of tips about how to pick software providers. Like I said, I picked, various software providers for various, different purposes throughout my life. And a lot of times this can be a very long and grueling process, but when done correctly, at the end you can get the solution you need at a price you can afford. And that's ultimately the goal, right? The ultimate goal is to fix the problem, to find the solution, to find this auxiliary thing that's going to help you. It's not always to do it as quickly as possible. So, I really recommend following this, this groundwork that I laid out here. And I think you'll have a lot of success. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you could do us a favor, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It's free to hit that subscribe button. And, we're almost at 2,500 subscribers, and you could be the one to put us over the edge. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next week.